welcome back to another video. So as you would have seen from the title and the thumbnail, today's video is going to be about spookoplathon organized by Becca. Her announcement video, I'll link it down below. But I'm going to be reading along for October, and basically how I'm gonna play this is I'm gonna roll as I go because I don't want to build a TBR at the beginning of the month. It's a little bit more stressful for me in that I have become more of a mood reader. So yeah, that's my rough explanation. And today is the 1st of October. 1st of October. So we're gonna start with our first roll and find a book that fits the prompt that we land on. Roll 2 dice, 6-sided, roll 1 times. Okay, now let's start rolling. Oh, first roll I got a 9. Then we move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, future. Oh, a book I've been saving for the future or the right time, also known as a rainy day book. Let me think about this. Okay. I have decided the first book that I'm going to be reading is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. So this one, I've read the first book in a video. I think it was the best books of 2023 video. The first book was The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This second book is the end of this duology. To my knowledge, there are 3 duologies in this series. This is the first duology, and The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King is the conclusion to the first duology, and it follows the events of what happened after the end of the first book. And I don't really want to spoil things too much. I'm just gonna start reading that. And the reason why I chose that for this prompt is because I've been trying to save it for another time because I had other books to read at the time, and this book just kept getting pushed back. But now I think it's like a perfect timing to start reading this book. And to my knowledge, it's very, very long. It's 665 pages on Goodreads according to the Kindle edition. So yeah, it's gonna take me some time. I'm gonna read it and come back to you with updates. Okay, hi! I'm coming back to update because I finished The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. So this follows the plot of what happened following the first book, which was Serpent and the Wings of Night. Let's talk about trigger warnings first. So trigger warnings for violence, blood, war, death of parents, slavery, sexual content, rape, sexual assault, and child death. And in the end, I decided to give this book 3 stars because I just felt quite detached from the book. I'm not sure if it's because I took a little bit of time to go into the second book after reading the first one. I felt rather apathetic towards whatever was happening, and not just that, because it felt like the plot was a little less complex in this second story, and it was more political, which again is not really things that I would like to read about in books. The romance was like, I kind of knew what was going to happen, so it was just kind of like, okay, we're just gonna get there eventually, like hurry up, you know? And even when they finally got together, it was kind of like I didn't feel anything from it, you know? So yeah, it's just less exciting compared to the first book. So I decided to give it 3 stars, and I don't think I'll continue reading the rest of the books in this series just because I felt quite meh about the second book. So that's that. Might change in the future, I'm not sure, but yeah. And then I finished this book yesterday and it was quite a busy day, so I didn't have time to come on an update on what I was going to read next. So I filmed me rolling the dice and me also moving the board. So the next prompt that I got was Blood, which was to read a book with a red cover, and I kind of bent that a little bit, which I'm like because I realized that I have 2 library books that I really need to read before I leave the country because the due dates of these books are before I come back. So that's kind of the situation. And the book that I decided to read for this prompt is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson, and it's a rather thick book, so I really need to get through it. And I mean, there's still red on the cover, like look at this. And the other version has more red on the cover, so I would say not entirely cheating. I'm currently 82 pages in, and as the title suggests, Rachel Price has just reappeared. So it's a lot of unraveling what happened when she disappeared all those years ago, and I'm not sure why this book is so thick because I don't know how complex this plot is gonna be, but I'm just gonna go along with the ride, and I really like the audiobook as well, and I'll come back to update when I get further into this book. And also one last update is that this video started out as for the spookoplathon readathon organized by Becca and the Books. And Throne of Pages, Bella, recently came up with October Discord server readathon also, so I wanted to join both. So this is the official announcement that this video is going to be me vlogging both. So I'm gonna try to combine prompts across both readathons as much as I can. Basically, it's like a choose your adventure TBR style. So I already went through my TBR for that in the fact that I chose all my paths. So I cannot change the prompts anymore, but I can change the books for the prompts, if that makes sense. So I'm going to be reading The Boyfriend for the prompt book published in October, Kill a Kingdom for the prompt book with more than one point of view, One Perfect Couple for the prompt odd number of pages. It has 385 pages. Only if you're lucky. I spun a wheel. This is a video evidence. And that book came up. And then I'm going to give myself a sweet treat. And last but not least, I need to read a book with any supernatural creature, which I'm thinking of reading the novella from the Crowns of Nightshare series, Six Scorched Roses, and that will be my last book in this series. If not, I'll read Best Hacks Ever. This readathon also has like a bingo board, so it's like a bingo board with a scavenger hunt in the prompts also. So I need to find words with murder, monster, chilling, I hate you, hunter, I'm scared, black, dark, witch, forest, and I'm sorry. So I tried to choose as many spooky books as I could. So yeah, that's the plan. And I don't know how long this vlog will be, but we'll see how. Okay, goodbye.
Time check. It is currently 3 in the morning and I just finished the reappearance of Rachel Price. Oh my god, that was a roller coaster. More thoughts the next day, but I just wanted to roll my next roll first and roll together. So yeah, this is the clip. Okay, here it goes. 6. Okay, so the last time it was here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cauldron. Okay. This needs to have a happy ending. It's called a rom-com. Oh my god.
Okay, hi, coming back to finally update because there has been no time. So let's talk about reappearance of Rachel Price first. As I mentioned, I finished this for the blood prompt. Trigger warnings, kidnapping, gaslighting, abandonment, dementia, murder, stalking, pregnancy, infertility, and body shaming. This was a very wild ride. Like, I understand why it's so long now. There were a few things that I kind of was like, okay, this is kind of like a plot hole. For example, there were a few conveniences, but the plot twists were twisting and it really gripped me. So I finished like the later half all in one sitting for like in the night time. So it was really intriguing and gripping. So I decided to give it 4.5 stars. It's quite different from Good Girl's Guide to Murder because this one is more centered on the Price family and the dynamics and everything was just like, ooh. I was trying to guess what was going to happen, but I didn't anticipate it, so that's saying something. Not that I'm a very good guesser. Good book, good read, recommend. And then afterwards, I spun Cauldron, which was to read a book that has more than one of your favorite tropes. And so for that book, conveniently, it's also the book that I needed to read before I returned to the library this week. It's The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. So this has both Grumpy Sunshine and Enemies to Lovers. It's so good, guys. Oh my god. Trigger warnings for death of parent, cancer, grief, anxiety, medical content, injury/injury detail, chronic illness, animal death, curse, and infertility. I think this is going to be one of my favorites of 2024, if not the most favorite book of 2024. Important thing to note is there is no steam in this at all, and for the book to still hit so much for me, It's amazing. So what the rom-commerce is about is basically Emma Wheeler has a dream of being a screenwriter, and she spent her life studying, obsessing over and writing romantic comedies that actually win contests, but because of her family circumstances, she has yet to become a successful one. She's the sole caregiver for her kind-hearted dad, and he needs 24 hours help, like 24/7 help. So then she finally gets her big break, which is the chance to rewrite a script for the famous screenwriter Charlie Yates, who wrote a very terrible rom-com. She passes on the caregiver duties to her younger sister and moves to LA to work with him. But their first meeting didn't go well because he wasn't expecting her to be there. So it was kind of rough. He was like, "You're a nobody. Even if I were to work with someone, it wouldn't be with a failed screenwriter." But then somehow they mend their relationship and then they work on rewriting the script together. It's so cute, okay? Oh my god. So this is about them rewriting a rom-com script, and Emma being the master of rom-coms. She knows everything about rom-com movies, and they discuss that a lot in this book. And then they also talk about the best movie kiss scenes, for example. And it's very, very intriguing because I haven't read about characters being screenwriters before, and it's a little bit different than just being like a writer for books, because this one is like you're writing a script for the movie, for the director to picture it and things like that. And it's funny. Oh my god. Normally I don't like enemies to lovers in contemporary romances because I feel like they're very childish in the ways that they are enemies. But for this one, I felt like it was handled very well, and they weren't enemies for super long, which I thought was great. Like, I need more of the lovers part. Charlie became nicer than expected after that whole initial enemies part. He was a very earnest and grateful guy towards Emma, and I was like, yes, like this is good. They both have had traumatic pasts, in that the whole thing with how she had to become her dad's caregiver because of the incident that happened. And Charlie also has a dark past as well, which I don't really want to spoil because I'll spoil later because I do want you to read this. So it really talks a lot about caretaking, being a caregiver, what it's like to be sick. So it's not your typical fluffy romance, which I ate it up. In conclusion, I gave this 5 stars if you couldn't already tell. And if you watch K-dramas, when I was talking about the kissing movie scenes, whatever, we talked about Ji Chang-wook, which is like, you know your shit. Now on to like a little bit of spoilery parts. So Charlie used to be sick. Like, he used to have cancer 5 years ago. So he was on the cusp of recovery already, to being fully recovered. And then he thought he got sick. So then he filmed a video that he passed on to his manager, who sent to Emma after he died. And that video killed me, okay? Oh my god, I got so emotional because I don't deal with these kinds of things well. Like, people being sick and then people passing away is not something that I like to think about. But when I do think about it, it just makes me emotional because things do happen. And I don't know what I'll do. But yeah, so that video killed me. And I think from the time lapse you could have seen that I was crying a little bit. And then in the clips before, I was like, this is a rom-com. As they mentioned when they were writing their script, rom-coms need to end on a happy note. So I was fully believing that there'll be a happy ending. That's the end of the spoilery part. It actually gave me butterflies. Like, there was like a certain level of angst in this that I really, really love. Like, right back when I used to read fanfiction, I would search for fluffy angst because there needs to be a little bit of angst for the fluff to fit so good, okay? And so good. Every time Emma gets hurt by something, Charlie immediately notices and he tries to resolve it immediately. So he confronts her and he's like, is it because of this, but then he talks to her and communicates their feelings, which I thought was great. There's a little bit of misunderstanding here, but that's kind of understandable from his point of view. So yeah, in conclusion, I really like this and please read it. So next prompt was spooky, which is not a typo, as I thought it was to read a spooky book that is actually not very scary. So I chose The Best Sex Ever. I'll update when I start reading it. Hi! It's been a very long time since I updated because in between I went on a trip to South Korea with my family and I was reading Best Sex Ever on the trip. But as you know, with trips, it's very difficult to actually have time to read. And when you get back to the hotel room at night, you're very, very tired. So I took the whole week to finish Best Sex Ever. And let's talk about trigger warnings first, and then we will continue from there. Trigger warnings for sexual content, cursing, alcohol, panic attacks or disorders, injury/injury detail, biphobia, medical content, death, and death of a parent. So what this story is about is we follow kitchen witch Dina Whitlock, who infuses magic into her pastries. It's more of like the feeling that she wants her customers to feel when they bite into her pastries. So it could be like biting into a pastry and just being very comforted. It feels like a warm hug, things like that. And she only has a few friends who knows about her being a witch. And then it's a little bit difficult for her to get into a relationship because her partner is guaranteed to have a string of bad luck the second they start to fall in love with her. So she thinks that she has been cursed and she's under a hex. And that's when she meets Scott Mason, who is back from traveling the world and is excited to begin his new job as a curator at the British Museum. They both first meet at Dina's coffee shop, but nothing happens from there. And then they are reunited when they find out that they are both the best man and the maid of honor at their best friend's wedding. And that's when things happen more from there. So I was expecting this to be like a very cozy fantasy, similar to Legends and Lattes, because that is also about a coffee shop. But this one is a little bit more layered because there's the whole thing about the hex and then their best friend's wedding, how being a witch and infusing all the things into her pastries. And there's also their like tension, their romance, and whether or not they want to pursue this relationship. There's that, but it's also way more steamy than I was expecting. Like, holy, this also deals with plus size romance. And I don't know what to call it, but Scott is a very hairy man and that gets mentioned quite a lot. So yeah, in the end, I decided to give this book only 3 stars because I wasn't really grabbed by this. Like at the start, I was hooked because I really was enjoying the cozy vibes and everything. But then as the story got into it and then they were talking about their romance and then they were getting steamy, I just felt nothing. So I was like, okay, this is not something that's super grabbing my attention, and I just didn't really want to continue reading because one, I was on a trip and then it didn't really make me want to continue reading because it's not really high stakes. So it's like all those factors combined, I just decided to give it 3 stars. And I screen recorded my next roll for spookoplathon because I was overseas, but my next roll got me to land on goal, which was to randomize a number from my want to read list and then I read the book that that number lands on. So I landed on ASAP, screenshot evidence, whatever evidence will be here, and then I started reading it. ASAP is the next book in the XOXO series by XDO. This follows a contemporary romance wherein we follow this K-pop boy group called XOXO. In the first book, it follows a romance between one of the boy group members and a stranger, if I remember correctly. And in this second book called ASAP, we follow a romance or a second chance romance between a trainee in the same entertainment company. Her name is Sori, who is also the daughter of the CEO of the entertainment company, and one of the other members in XOXO, Nathaniel. They actually dated previously, but a scandal broke out, and because Sori was wanting to become a girl group member, she was a trainee, she's training to debut, these kind of rumors would like destroy her career as well as Nathaniel's, so they decided to break up. And in this second book, it's more of their second chance romance. We also follow more things and not just their second chance romance, because from the first book to the second book, she has realized that she doesn't want to become a girl group member, she doesn't want to become an idol basically, because she doesn't like being in the spotlight and the idea of how every little detail of your life is going to be scrutinized by the members of the public. So in this book, she is trying to figure out what she wants to do with her career, and at the same time she's trying to help a new member of this girl group that is going to debut soon to match up to the level of the other members in the group, because this girl is very new but she has been added last minute to the group and she needs to debut in 2 weeks, things like that. Similar to the first book, the author is very good at knowing all these things about the K-pop industry, and it's very, very realistic. Like they go for shoots for variety shows or radio podcasts, they train for hours for their choreography, for their recording of the album. It's all very similar to what I observe as a K-pop fan, I would say, and the writing is very good in that it's not like your cheesy K-pop romance, if that makes sense. Let's talk about trigger warnings. Trigger warnings for toxic relationship, infidelity, sexism, injury/injury detail, bullying, medical content, sexual content, alcohol, and blood. From these trigger warnings, I also got reminded of humor points. So it also talks about Sori's parents. They are not in the best relationship. They're basically just together for the sake of being together because it will look better in the public eye. It also talks about a lot about how toxic their relationship is in terms of when idols are dating. The fans' reactions are normally not very good. A lot of these kind of topics are explored in depth, which was great, but I decided to give it 3.25 stars because I wasn't very gripped again in this story. It felt like I preferred XOXO more because that one really took me by surprise, but because this one I knew what I was going in for, and I'm not a super big fan of second chance romance, it felt fine to me. So I landed on 3.25 stars, and that's all I can say for that book. So far we have talked about 2 books. I forgot to mention that Best Text Ever was also part of the Simps in the Abyss readathon, in which I read that book for the prompt book with any supernatural creature. Tina is a witch, and there are also familiars in that book. Then the next book I decided to read was also for the Sims in the Abyss readathon in a book published in October. So The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden is the book that I chose for that prompt, and it's the first book I've read from this author. Trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for murder, blood, death, stalking, domestic abuse, alcohol, torture, animal death, and animal cruelty. Okay, sorry this video is all over the place because I'm doing literally 2 readathons at the same time, but I forgot to mention, with ASAP, I have completed 5 rows, and that's normally the number of rows that I set out to do for any Bookopoly readathon. And because this time isn't coinciding with another readathon, 5 was the number that I decided on. And fortunately, I didn't land on any doubles, so I ended with 5 books, okay? So spookoplathon is now officially done for me. I need to finish Sims in the Abyss now. So talking about The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden, this book is about Sydney, who is having terrible luck with dating on the dating apps in New York. We are first introduced to her on a date with the worst guy you can possibly imagine. He starts off with saying like, oh, you're the perfect woman I can imagine, except that you have monster arms. Like, without those arms, you are perfect. And then he oogles at the waitress's breasts, and then he's like, oh, she has perfect arms. He judges whatever Sydney is trying to order, like Diet Coke, and then he's like, are you sure you want Diet Coke? You don't want Diet Coke. That's terrible. Also video calls his mum to show the mum Sydney on the first date, and we end it off with the last step by him wanting to walk her home. When he walks her home, he wants a kiss. It starts with a hug. She doesn't want a hug, and he's like, okay, how about a kiss then? What a red flag, okay? She fortunately gets saved by this mystery man who just happened to be walking by in the area and frightens off that guy. Then later on, we look at how she has a few friends from her apartment, I would say. They go to Pilates classes together. One of them is also trying to find love on dating apps, and the friend was very happy because she finally seems to have found a guy that she thinks is the one. But unfortunately, a few days later, she gets brutally murdered, like her body is mutilated into all her different body parts. So that makes Sydney stay off the dating apps for a while because the detective of that case happens to be her ex-boyfriend, and the ex-boyfriend was telling her that they were thinking that it might be this guy that she met off of that dating app. Very like summarized plot, okay? But then about 2 or 3 months later, she's like, okay, I need to put myself out there again. That's when it just so happens that the timing also coincides. She meets the mystery man again. That's when they really start to get to know each other better. She seems to think that he's the perfect boyfriend. All of this happening while they still can't find the perpetrator behind the guy who killed her friend. Then she keeps getting this niggling suspicion that the guy, the boyfriend, is not as perfect as he seems. And then the story develops from there. So don't want to go any further because that would be spoilery, but I would say that this one was relatively gripping in that I really wanted to find out what would happen. So I think I read it in about 2 days. I thought that it was kind of predictable because you know the book is called The Boyfriend, right? Like the author is trying to push you into a certain belief and suspicion. Then there are twists that happened in this book that made me like, oh, okay, like, so that's where this book is supposed to be special. But then I would think that, is it really meant to be like this, or was the author just trying to get a twist out of nowhere, you know? So I decided to land on 3.5 stars because I was gripped, but the ending didn't really make me want to believe in it so much. Thrillers in general, the ending always makes it or breaks it for me, so for me it was a 3.5 stars. That's for that book. Last update, I moved on to Kill a Kingdom, which is for the prompt of book with more than one point of view, because we follow alternating points of view from the male and female main characters. I didn't read about the plot and I just jumped in, so I was quite surprised to find out that this is like a Little Mermaid retelling, but very darkly twisted. So I am about halfway going to leave my thoughts for the next clip because this clip is too long. So yeah, we'll come back with updates.
I'm back again because I forgot to update about the bingo board. And okay, I am also gonna hydrate right now to cross off that first hydrate prompt, and I'll cross off the other hydrate prompt at another time. And yeah, that's all the progress so far.
I'm back because I finished To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Crystal. I don't think I mentioned what this story was about. Before we go into that, trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for violence, blood, theft, child abuse, gore, emotional abuse, slavery, genocide, and cursing. To Kill a Kingdom is actually a dark YA fantasy with a bit of fantasy romance. It's kind of like a retelling of The Little Mermaid because we follow Princess Lyra, who is siren royalty, and she has been cursed into humanity by the ruthless Sea Queen, and she must deliver the heart of the infamous siren killer or remain a human forever. On the other hand, our male main character, Prince Elian, is heir to the most powerful kingdom in the world and captain to a deadly crew of siren hunters. So that's the gist of their story, and when they come together, when they meet, they kind of go on this quest to steal something. Lyra also wanted to overthrow her mother because the Sea Queen is like a terrible person, and Elian wants to retrieve that object to save the world. So I gave this 2.75 stars because I have never felt less gripped in a fantasy story. I don't know if it's because it's about sirens, pirates, and I don't really think that's my cup of tea, but also like the romance I didn't really feel anything for. The only good points in this book were that the banter was seriously good and the dynamics of the crew members of Elian's ship are very, very good and tight, and I thought that was great. But apart from that, yeah, like the plot didn't really connect with me. I was just speeding through trying to finish it while still understanding what happens, but I'm just very, very bored. So that's why I'm going to leave this and move on to my next book, which is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. This one is for the prompt book with an uneven number of pages, and it has a total page count of 383. Yeah. So this is a thriller. Don't know anything about it as usual. I'm gonna go into it first and then come back when I have updates. Hi, so I'm coming back because I have since finished 2 books for Simps in the Abyss, and I actually only have one last book left. First book that I finished, and I also updated that I was reading this book, is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. And this book, it is essentially about, I think, four couples who go onto this island to film a dating reality show. Our main character is Lila and Nico. So Lila is a researcher. So she has been doing her postdoctoral research but haven't been having good results, and she's pretty sure her contract won't be extended. Her partner, Nico, is an aspiring actor who hasn't been able to land any good acting roles to propel his fame. He finally sees this opportunity and wants to grab it so that he can finally become the famous actor that he has been wanting to be for the past I don't know how long. Lila gets convinced to go with him to try to fulfill this dream of his. But not long after, there is a storm that hits this deserted island, and this leaves them stranded on the island with no idea of when and how long and how will help even get to them. This is kind of like a survival kind of thriller, and let's talk about trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for domestic abuse, murder, violence, physical abuse, blood, toxic relationship, suicide, adult minor relationship, and eating disorder. The way that I said it's like a survival thriller is because there wasn't really anything super thrilling about this, because everything is laid out to you and you're just slowly seeing things take a turn for the worse. So it's not like scary at all. It's more of just how long will it take for them to get help, and in the process what's happening to the people as bad things happen to them. This gave me more of Animal Farm and Lord of the Flies vibes compared to a thriller. And Animal Farm and Lord of the Flies both get mentioned in this book, which I was like, yes, that's exactly what I think this book was going for. So in the end, I decided to give this book 3.5 stars because it was still intriguing enough for me to want to finish it in 2 days, but not the thriller kind of vibe that I am more used to and that I particularly enjoy. So 3.5 stars is what I landed on, and this was for the prompt of book with an odd number of pages. I think I mentioned that already. And then the next book that I read was Only If You're Lucky by Stacey Willingham. This one is after I spun a wheel and it landed on this book, so I decided to read this. This book is about college friends. So basically, Margot went to college in South Carolina called Rutledge to get away from her small town because she was supposed to go there with her best friend, but before they got to go, her best friend died. She's just very depressed and mopes around for the first year until right before the second year starts. She gets chosen by Lucy, who's like this super popular girl, who invites her to join her and 2 other girls in a shared house for their second year. And she's very drawn to Lucy. Slowly the story develops, and you can see that Lucy is a very suspicious person. And from the prologue, it starts off with them being in a police investigation because a boy from the frat house next door is dead and Lucy is missing. So you spend the rest of the story trying to find out what happens, and the perspectives of each chapters are split into before and after. So as usual, trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for murder, death, toxic relationship, rape, sexual assault, stalking, infidelity, car accidents, and abandonment. So initially when I first started reading this, I was very close to wanting to put it down because I couldn't really understand or really vibe with the fact that Lucy was the character that everyone is drawn to, and you can clearly tell that Margot is kind of like drawn to her as well. She's kind of an asshole actually because she was rooming with another girl in the first year, and they weren't friendly to the point of best friends because she was still grieving after her original best friend died, but she just views her roommate as too similar to herself and that they're both very clingy, eager to please, trying to have a best friend, things like that. So she ditches her roommate to go room with Lucy, and I was like, that's not very nice of her. I wasn't really like into college stories anymore, but then the more I got into this story, the more I was like, okay, things are starting to get more interesting, and then I could want to finish it already. So yeah, that's my overall vibes of this book. And towards the end, the plot points were like, okay, kind of makes sense, but not really. So I kind of ended off with 3.75 stars because of the last few points that I was like, okay, the logic is not really like logicking, but I guess it's meant to be a twist. But yeah, 3.75 stars because it was too good. Wanted to add one more point for One Perfect Couple. This was good up until I was okay with it, up until the last point. We figure out how this reality show came to be in the first place. That doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, 3.5 stars. I'll come back with another update if I get to finish the last book, but it's already 28 October. The last prompt was to read a book written by a Hispanic author, of which I chose Lobizona, but I don't know if I have time to get to it because I'm currently in the middle of another book to finish reading for a library reading. If there are no other updates for this, then I guess it'll be the end of the vlog, and I got to read this number of pages and this number of books. This is what the updated board looks like now. And to prove that I did hydrate, I'm just gonna hydrate one more time. And also joined reading sprints. And I did read for 1 hour in that reading sprint, so it's kind of like a double kill. and I hope you enjoyed. So if you did, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel to see more of such content. I hope you're having a great day or a great week whenever or wherever you're watching. Remember to stay hydrated, and I'll see you in my next video. I assume this will be up after Halloween, so I hope you had a great Halloween too.